In this lesson, we'll cover creating beam systems. So let's say you want to place multiple beams within an area or an opening. You can use a beam system. So looking at our structural model, if I look toward the upper portion of this 3D model, we have two beam systems. And I can move my mouse over it and the beam system is identified by dashed lines. And I can move over this other one, we have another beam system. So basically, it's placing the beams inside of this open area in both of the actual examples. So what we're going to do is create two beam systems on the opposite side, here on the lower left. To do that, let's go to a floor plan. The floor plan we want is the O2 floor. Go ahead and double-click it. Now make note of the actual beam layout on the top or the upper portion of this structure. We're going to place the beams in the lower portion the same manner. So let's zoom in to the lower left. We'll start by creating a beam system in the lower quadrant, or this lower open area. To do that, let's go to the Structure tab. On the Structure tab, click Beam System. Now when defining a beam system, you can make one automatically, or we can sketch the boundary. We're going to do the first one automatic. So on the ribbon, choose Automatic Beam System. You can tag if you want, but we're not going to tag these beams. On the options bar, choose the beam type, in this case 400 by 800 millimeters. Set the justification to center, meaning it'll center the beams. And then the layout rule can be defined based on what you want. There's 4 settings in this case. Fixed distance is basically a given distance between the center lines of the beams. If we look at clear spacing, it's similar to fixed distance, but the distance is between the edges of the beams, not their center lines. Then you also have fixed number. This is basically how many beams do you want to contain within this area. And the last one is maximum spacing. Basically, in this case, where you specify the maximum distance between the center lines of the beams. We're going to leave this one set to fixed distance, and that distance is going to remain at 1800. 3D is checked, and Walls Define Slope is checked as well, although we don't have any slope in this example. Now, all I have to do since I'm on automatic is move into one of the open areas and then over one of the existing beams. The existing beam will dictate the actual layout or orientation of the new beams created within this system. So for example, I can move my mouse over one of the horizontals and I can see 3 new beams are added in this system in the open cavity. It's using the existing beams, the columns, and the grid as a boundary for creating the system automatically. Go ahead and left click to place the actual beams. Now once those beams are placed, we want to place additional beams in this upper cavity. The method we'll use for this will be to sketch the system. So on the ribbon, choose Sketch Beam System. Now once you do that, the actual ribbon changes and we have the Draw panel. This is where we can draw our lines to include the area for our new beam system. Or we can tell Revit to pick lines or to pick supports. We're going to choose Pick Lines as an example. So when I do Pick Lines, I can pick the inside lines of the existing beam system, and then I can use my tools on the Modify bar to actually enclose or make this a closed shape, such as the Trim tool. So I can use the corner trim to corner trim all of these shapes so I have an enclosed shape. Now make note, if you use this manner, you have an overlap here in the upper left, so you'll have to trim that as well so it doesn't overlap. Now I can set the beam direction as well. Currently it's set correctly, and I can see that by the beam direction symbol on the left. But if it wasn't, you could choose beam direction and select the correct beam. Now with this set, all I have to do is click the green check mark. This will update, and then I'm back to creating or changing the options on the option bar for my size, my center justification, and my layout of fixed. If I like this layout, simply click Modify or click in the background to deselect. So in this lesson, we looked at creating beam systems. We looked at 2 different methods. One, an automatic method of creating a beam system where we use the boundary of existing beams in columns and grids to actually place the beam system. The second system was placed by manually either drawing lines to include the perimeter, selecting lines, or selecting supports. For both types of systems, we can set the type of beam, justification, such as the center, and the actual layout rules, like fixed distance, fixed number, maximum spacing, or clear spacing.